Martin McGuinness is the Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland and the leader of the Irish Republican Party Sinn Fein. Mr McGuinness was instrumental in bringing about the Good Friday Agreement. Northern Ireland voted massively to stay in the EU. Mr McGuinness says it should receive special treatment. He was in Brussels this week to rally support for Northern Ireland as the British government begins to negotiate the UK's exit from the European Union. I spoke with him in the European Parliament.
How would you categorise the position for Northern Ireland in terms of Brexit?
Well, we are very concerned that we are collateral damage in this battle between the British government and the European Union over Brexit. And of course, Brexit is hugely damaging to politics, social interaction, and our economic prospects. Also, people need to remember, and the European Union have invested greatly in the peace process and in supporting various programs that have complemented the peace process over many decades, that the Good Friday Agreement was about ending division between people in the north, between north and south, and between east and west. Brexit undermines all of that and undermines the whole principle of consent, because this obviously represents a massive constitutional change. And of course the people of the north voted overwhelmingly to see their future in Europe, 56%.
If a hard border comes into place, what does that mean for Northern Ireland?
Well, I think it would be hugely damaging. It would be a massive setback because, as I say, the whole purpose of the Good Friday Agreement was to end the division on the island. The establishment of a hard border, I think, would be an encouragement to those small, unrepresentative groups who are still committed to violence. They would see that as a boost for them and a real opportunity for them to continue with their work of trying to plunge us back to the past. I think it would be very, very damaging for the peace process. And I think the people here at the European Union that I spoke to yesterday are very conscious of that, because the European Union are stakeholders in the peace process, having made a massive contribution to it over many decades.
Do you think that if the peace funding was to end, there's a risk that Northern Ireland would go back to war?
I don't think peace funding on its own, I mean, it's speculated that peace funding will come to an end at some stage in the future over the next 4 or 5 years. But I think there will always be an interest in peace in the north of Ireland and on the island of Ireland from the European Union. So I think there will always be an interest in investing in continuing with what is a huge success story, which has made a massive impact on other peace processes throughout the world. And we just hear what the President of Colombia has said about how the peace process in Ireland inspired him to make peace with the FARC guerrillas. A conflict where hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives over 50 years. So we shouldn't underestimate the importance of the Irish peace process, but certainly it's in our interest to ensure that that peace process continues. It's certainly in our interest that the armed groups, which are there at the moment and still dedicated to violence, do not succeed.
The British government, do you think it actually has the right to force Brexit, given that there's the Good Friday Agreement, there's a devolved administration in Northern Ireland, and in Scotland also has some parliament? Do you think the British government has the right to go forward with Brexit on the basis of this referendum?
No, I don't believe that they have the right to go forward with it at all. I think that the British government embarked on this course as a result of infighting within the British Conservative Party. And we are the collateral damage to all of that, because quite clearly they embarked on this course of action without giving consideration to the political, social and economic impact on the island of Ireland. Now, from our perspective, we can criticise from now until the cow come home. What we need is a plan to deal with this situation in the time ahead. And I have to say, I was encouraged by the fact that Arlene Foster was prepared to sign up to a joint letter with me to the British Prime Minister, outlining various areas of concern, not least the whole issue of the prospect of a hard border. And then that has been followed up by, I think, positive comments from Jeffrey Donaldson, a member of the DUP in Dublin, where he clearly stated that it was their view that the island of Ireland needs to be treated as a special case. And he actually repeated that here when he came to the European Parliament afterwards. So Ireland is a special case. And I think there's a huge responsibility on the government in the north, which is the DUP and ourselves and Sinn Fein, working closely with the Irish government to ensure that we can protect the interests of all of the people of the island.
You've been in the European Parliament yesterday and today. How have you been received? How do people understand the position of Northern Ireland?
I've been received very, very warmly indeed. I think the European Union is very tuned in to the success of the Irish peace process, don't want to see that undermined. And I think they also understand that a key element of the peace process moving forward is showing people who suffered from the effects of conflict that the fruits of peace is economic progress, it's jobs, it is the various supports that they have introduced, like common agricultural policy, Interreg, infrastructure funds, and of course massive support for various educational institutions and the business community.
If Brexit actually happens in the end, and there are many things that can happen over the next 2 years, if even longer than that, how can Northern Ireland remain within the European Union, and what was your sense of potential solutions that could be worked out when you've been speaking with politicians here?
Well, I think that's what has to be explored in the time ahead, and we will explore that between now and March of next year. We certainly see our future in Europe. The whole of the island of Ireland sees its future in Europe. We want to continue with that relationship. Obviously, Brexit impacts on that because that's a determination by this British government to drag us out of Europe against the democratically expressed wishes of the people. So the British government have to face up to that, the fact that people in the north did vote to remain, people in Scotland voted to remain, and of course the Irish government have a key role to play. So we're asking people here at the European Union not to abandon those people who see their future in Europe. So as in everything else, and we've been through this in the Irish peace process, what we need are imaginative solutions to these problems, and I hope we can find one.
Okay. Sinn Fein obviously wants to see United Ireland in the long term. That's not going to happen in the next 2 years, but do you see this as a staging post where you can put in place a mechanism which could lead to United Ireland?
Well, we are a party that works towards our primary political objective, which is the reunification of Ireland by purely peaceful and democratic means. Obviously, we're faced with an immediate challenge in relation to the whole issue of Brexit. And I think what that has done is it has posed challenges for people within the unionist community to consider. Here we are dealing with a British government that really doesn't care about the north of Ireland, give no consideration whatsoever to the effects of the referendum or a negative outcome to that referendum. And I think you're already seeing in Scotland, for example, people who were previously pro-union turn against Westminster and now supporting the whole argument for Scottish independence. So, as an Irish Republican, I think it's very natural that I hope that people within the unionist community will challenge themselves about the relationship with a government in London that really doesn't care about them.
Okay, finally, the Conservative Party conference was branded racist by even members of the Conservative Party itself. Is that something you would agree with?
Well, I've been saying all along that the whole Brexit referendum, which was a massive mistake on David Cameron's part, was driven by racists within UKIP and by the extreme right wing of the Tory party. No, they're effectively in control. People can put whatever label they want on it, but certainly I do think that given the predominance of the argument around immigration, you can clearly see that there is a massive prejudice against people recognising that we should be living in a multicultural society. If you go to New York and you walk the streets of New York, people from every part of the world, and it functions and it works. Why should we turn against our European neighbours? I actually think the more people who come to our shores, contribute positively to life, pay their taxes, open their restaurants, that's an enrichment of all of our lives. And I think what's happening within the British Tory party, or that part of the British Tory party that supported the referendum, was something different from all that.